Well, hey. Well, I've just come off of a 4-hour rehearsal. Fun times. Rehearsing with the fantastic cast of the Outcast Creative. What a hard-working bunch they are. We have been working hard rehearsing False Accounts, which is opening very soon. I've even got a banner for that somewhere, haven't I? Got a thing. Got one of them things. At the Oso Theatre. Look, there we go. Look at that. From the 31st of May until the 4th of June. It's already booking from now. You can book your tickets now. You can come and see that. It's about the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history. The Horizon Post Office scandal tells you everything you need to know about it. It's all going on right now. Public inquiry is going on right now. Fantastic stuff. But tonight we're doing a retro review of films from back in the day, and we're going all the way back to 1992, a favorite year of mine, for reasons that I'll get into later. But I'm joined once again, fantastically so, from my brother from another mother, Matthew Holmes from Down Under. There he is.
Hello.
Sporting a neater haircut and glasses. Did you have the glasses last time? I can't remember.
Not last time, but it's just, getting to that age now.
Congratulations, mate. You're now as old as I feel.
Now I feel like a real film director now that I actually have to wear glasses. So
yeah, mate. The final stage is to grow a beard, and then you'll be right up there.
Yep, and allow the hair to get really messy, because very, very important directors. Actually, I find directors fall into two camps. They're either really clean cut, well dressed, sort of the Alfred Hitchcock, Christopher Nolan look, or it's the Tim Burton look. Hair be damned. I'm a director. I don't need to do my hair.
I'm just going to give a shout out to Mark Kelly, who's joined us. He is actually one of the victims of the post office scandal.
Wow.
Yeah, he had his whole business destroyed, lost his house, nearly lost his marriage over it, but fortunately it survived. Darth Plato's popping in as well, one of the regulars. Hi, mate. Good to see you. And Josh, who is one of our regular moderators. Only stopping by for a few minutes, Josh. We know it. You can leave the stream on, so it increases those watch hours for me. That'd be lovely. We've got to get those up, because that's how I'm going to get monetized. Anyway, but we're talking about two oldies, and boy, have we picked them, because we did a stream last week about a sort of historical film, I guess we would say. You call it a historical film we did last week, right?
Yeah, what was it? We covered a few films. It was.
Mate, I'm so tired from rehearsals. I was depending on you to remember the film we covered last week.
I know we covered about 3 films, but I know I can't quite remember what they all were.
We did a historical movie, and we said, "Oh, wouldn't it be fun to do Columbus as a result of doing?" Stream? I'm going to go. This is terrible, man.
Well, the problem is that you and I talk about so many movies.
We do. This is true.
We can't keep up with.
We did the Bounty. We did the Bounty.
Of course, the Bounty. And
that was your suggestion, dude. So you definitely should have remembered that.
Yeah. See, it's been a long week.
Mark Kelly's a great guy. I'm looking forward to meeting Mark in person. Oh, and by the way, Matt, Mark has got a really cool dog, and you and I are both big dog guys. And his dog is named Gizmo. Can you guess, as a film director, why he named his dog Gizmo?
Well, I'd think he would have called his dog Gizmo because the dog's probably got very big ears and looks like Gizmo.
From the film
Gremlins.
Ding! Correct. Well done. You were a cookie. That is true. Mark Kelly did name his dog after Gizmo.
Well, actually, sometimes I call my dog Gizmo, and just affectionately, I call it, "Oh, you look like Gizmo," because he does have the similar big ears.
Well, if Hugo happens to wander in the room today, pop him up on screen.
I will. He's in here with me, but he's fallen asleep at the door. So
well, let's not disturb him right now. We might get him in a little bit. Okay, we're going to talk about 2 pretty interesting movies. I mean, what's particularly interesting about them is that they came out the same year. They came out within months of each other, and they actually were competing to be the one who debuted first, because the one who debuted first, in theory, takes the bigger box office.
Yes, and of course it was the 500-year anniversary of the discovery of the Americas by Christopher Columbus, which is why they were both aiming for this, 1992, 1492. They were both aiming for this window, which is why the projects were competing.
I don't know about you, but I feel like we should cover them one at a time. I think if we jump back and forth, it will get pretty confusing. And I feel we should cover them in order that they came out.
All right. So so the two films, for those who don't know, 1492 Conquest of Paradise by Ridley Scott and
directed by Ridley Scott, indeed.
And then the second one is called Christopher Columbus, The Discovery, directed by John Glenn.
And for those people that don't know, John Glenn for many years directed Second Unit for Eon Productions, who of course produced the James Bond movies. And then he was, as is often the case, they kind of promote from within Eon, which is, I think it's a nice family feel. I think that's a great way to run a film production company. And eventually John Glenn, having been an editor and Second Unit director for Bond, in fact, he was an editor to begin with. You'll see he has editing credits on many of the early Bond films, particularly the Roger Moore era. He was finally given the mantle of director. I want to say that his first directing debut for the Bond series was For Your Eyes Only, I believe.
Yes. I noticed today when I looked up his IMDb, big director of Bond films.
Yeah. And actually, he was supposed to be sitting next to me at the late Alan Tompkins' funeral. And it was like I sat down and there were place names all on the table. And I looked at the place name next to Lance Nielsen and it was like John Glenn. And I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, well, there's only one John Glenn that I know of. And fortunately, I forgot that he directed Christopher Columbus. So if he had been there, I think he was unwell and he couldn't attend. I wouldn't have hit him up about Chris Columbus. I would have hit him up about my favorite Bond topics. But, okay, so I remember this poster.
I remember it too from the video store. Lots of trips to the video store, and remember seeing that all the video stores in my area had one copy of this, and it was always right down the bottom, sort of obscurely tucked away down the bottom where nobody really cared. And I often picked it up and would go, "What the hell is this? Another? It must be a documentary." I put it down because it has no faces.
A documentary with Tom Selleck in it.
I didn't even read the names. I thought maybe if I did, I probably thought they were narrators because there's no faces on the poster.
Right.
And so if there's no faces advertising the movie, and it's just three ships, you go, oh, well, I guess it's just... So they didn't even get their poster right.
But and now I might be wrong, and I know we don't want to jump back and forth between the films too much. I'm pretty sure that the 1492 poster also didn't have faces of actors on it.
It has a human on it, though. The poster of...
Yeah, and actually I can tell you now that this is not the poster for the UK release. The poster for the original UK release didn't even have that on it. Didn't even have that guy. But look, we'll come back to that. We don't want to.
Poster. I can't even remember what the poster had here. It was. I can't. It doesn't ring a bell.
Well, I have a slight advantage over you in the sense that I saw both of these movies in the cinema.
Yes, I did not see them at the cinema.
No, I saw 1492 on the opening night at Empire Screen 1. Christopher Columbus: The Discovery didn't get a UK release. What they did with it was, as they did with a lot of films that they weren't uncertain about, was they tested it in the West End. That's the square that I took you to when you came to the UK. You know, you had it cinema on each side. Yeah. And the Dunkirk premiere was on at the time. And it was on at the same screen, Odeon Leicester Square, that the Dunkirk premiere was on. Actually, when you come over this time, I don't care what film is on. I'm definitely taking you to my favorite screen. Okay. Even if we have to go and see like a Sesame Street movie or something. But
as long as it's not a Transformers movie or some crap.
oh shit, no, I dude, I wouldn't put you through a Michael Bay film. I mean, that would just be mean.
It would be. It'd be a bit cold.
Jim, we've only just started, dude, because this stream is much later than normal. So you're actually catching us at the beginning, my friend. So those people watching, do like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for tuning in. And if you want to do your own little post about what we're talking about and whack it up in your social media, listen, I'd appreciate it, because that's how we spread the word. So this is produced by the Salkin brothers, although predominantly Alexander, who seems to be the only one, because I think the other brother walked off the production.
Right.
Is that right?
And I'm not too sure. That the thing with the Salkinds is they're sort of a multi-generational family of producers, so it's hard to keep up with who is who. I know the Salkinds did the Alexander Salkind was absolutely involved in the Superman movies 1, 2, and 3.
Chris Reeve.
Yeah, obviously, and because and they've brought Mario Puzo over to or Puzo, or however you say his name, who was the writer of the Godfather movies, the novels, and also the writer of the Superman films. They brought Mario over for this film. Obviously using people he's worked with before. And I think what's so surprising about, I mean, I guess we're going to be talking about this film first.
Yeah.
What's surprising about this film is that you seem to have all the right ingredients. You've got what seems to be a competent director of successful James Bond films, Mario Puzo doing the screenwriting, obviously Godfather and Superman. You know, you've got exactly the same budget as the other competing film, and a relatively good cast, a good composer. What the hell went wrong?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. And one of the things that maybe gives a clue to what went wrong.
Oh, hang on. I can see that Puzo only is responsible for the story.
No, he's also got a screenwriting. He's got a screenwriting.
He does have a scriptwriting.
He has got a screenwriting credit if you look. But
I wonder how much his version survived when the others came in and messed around with it, because usually that's what happens. You get an original writer, and then it goes through drafts, and they bring on these other people, and they change it. And like you said, remember your buddy said in your letter, that article, that there were lots of different pages.
I'm sharing the article with the chat now. So guys in the chat, this is a sarcastic letter written to the Independent from one of the actors who was on the production of Christopher Columbus: The Discovery. The actor's name was Hugo Blick. I'm actually trying to get hold of him at the moment. I did try and get hold of a couple of, I don't think I would have got any of the actors on here, because I did speak to a couple of actors that were on this movie, but they couldn't join us for a stream this late in the UK. But it's like, oh my God, that film, you know, you're talking about that movie, and it's like, well, yeah, we are. Guys, if that link, I don't know what happened with that link there, but if you do a search for, I'll tell you what, if I just put the headline in, if you search Hugo Blick, and then like this, and then the Independent newspaper, I'm going to read out some excerpts of this in a sec, and then Christopher Columbus, you will get the link up, you'll get the article up. And this guy wrote in, and I remember that this is the one thing I remember about this movie, was that my mother showed me this article before it was released. And it was only on for a week in central London. And I thought, I'm going to go and see it. How bad can it be? It's got Marlon Brando in it. It's directed by a Bond director. It's got the Superman producers producing it. Okay, Tom Selleck's in it. You know, he's not the greatest actor, but I was kind of curious to see him in it. Catherine Zeta-Jones, who was in one of the companies of Bugsy Malone before me, was in it. So there was a lot of interesting nuggets there for me to be keen. And I went to see it at the cinema, and I remember coming out and going, what the F was that? And
Which was precisely how I felt when you shared the movie with me the other day, and I watched it. At the end of it, I was just, "What the hell was that?"
Yeah, because you'd never seen it before, right?
Never seen it. So safe to say that before we launch in and ripping this thing apart and trying to basically dissecting the dead body to see how it was killed, I did not like this film at all. It was an absolute chore to get through. It is possibly one of the worst films I've ever actually seen.
Yeah. Okay. So Matt, what would you give it on IMDb?
I would give this film a 2 out of 10.
Okay, I'd probably be more generous. I'd probably give it 4 out of 10. There's a couple of things in it I quite like. They're quite minor, but I'll get into them. And I know we're going to disagree on a couple of them, but that's part of the fun, buddy.
That's all right. We're allowed to disagree.
Absolutely. There's no point. You and I do agree on a lot of movies. I think we probably agree 90% of the time. We're pretty similar. But I'm probably a bit more forgiving than you on a couple of things. But I think we should. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up Hugo Blick's article, and I'm going to quote from it, and we're going to get into maybe why this movie was a bit of a disaster. So, guys, this is the link you're looking for. Marlon, Millions, and Me. When Hugo Blick was signed for the $50 million Christopher Columbus The Discovery, he expected the full Hollywood treatment, and boy, did he get it. Now, this article was originally published 2nd of January, 1993. Okay, so we're going back quite a way. And I mean, Hugo Blick, for those people who don't know, when you're watching the film, he is playing there are two priests in the movie that go on the voyage. There's one priest that they leave behind on the island, and there's a second slightly better looking priest that they also have on the voyage back, who is preaching to the natives that they take with them. And this guy is playing the second slightly better looking priest, and it's pretty funny. It's like 22nd of October 1991. I'm sitting in the room with the Salkins. They say nothing. I say nothing. The casting director speaks. She tells them of my numerous worthy theatrical enterprises, including a revival of Kids, the Spanish Tragedy. I'm assuming that's something to do with pirates. Do you know the play? I hear myself asking, but no one speaks. Well, you should see it. It's very good. Silence. The casting director looks down at my CV and says, he was in Batman. Silence. Ilya Silkin looks up. You were in Batman? Only momentarily, he said. I say. You were in Batman, he insists. Yes, I say. He nods and looks away. I'm in. So that was the casting session. He didn't actually have an audition.
You were in Batman.
Yeah, and he was in Batman for about 30 seconds. And actually, if you go to Hugo Blick's Facebook fan page, it says in brackets, he was in Batman for 30 seconds next to Hugo Blick's name. And
I think that's probably the attitude in producing this that they took in, is that they went in because they had this idea. Well, no, I'm just completely judging from the outside, but they obviously wanted a hit, but they've gone about it in completely the wrong way. And that's what I think why this film failed. If I was to try to dissect it all these years later, they've gone about it in the most inappropriate way to make a film.
Yeah,
it's that producer thinking. It's that backwards thinking about someone who makes films but doesn't truly understand films. So they approach it in this completely backwards way of how you do it. And interestingly enough, I found out that Ridley Scott was actually supposed to direct this film for the Salkinds.
That's right. He was originally. I remember that now.
He backed off and for a competing project, and then was sued by the Salkinds for $40 million, which is basically the whole budget of their movie. He was sued because they reckon he was taking ideas from their script and putting it into his competing one. So yeah, quite got a little bit nasty there. But they dropped the lawsuit eventually.
There was a lot of suing going on because, as somebody pointed out earlier, Jim D, who's good to have you in, Jim. Tim Dalton was originally supposed to be the lead. He was. and it definitely would. I don't think it would have been a good film, but it definitely would have been a stronger film.
He would have held it up a lot better than the guy they got, but he sued the Salkinds as well.
Yeah, he did, and I think the reason he may have left, and the clue might be in this article, because he left in pre-production. He didn't leave. They were due to shoot with him. I think he even went out there. I don't know the full story, but Hugo Blick says in his article, when in nature black and yellow signal danger, in the film industry it's pink and blue. These are the colors of second and third draft script rewrites. So it takes me a while to pick up the one waiting for me in my hotel room. Even from this distance, I can tell it's venomous. I count 7 pages in a total of 108. So that means that 111 pages of the script that he originally wrote before he signed on to do the film were rewritten. And later in this article, it reveals that most of the rewrites were done by one of the Salkinds' partners, either his wife or partner. So basically,
Mario Puzo puts up a first draft, which might have been quite good. And then it gets rewritten by all these other people, and that's what you end up with.
I mean, it's that does seem quite likely.
And I mean, wasn't even supposed to be John Glenn directed this film, but he wasn't even supposed to do it. It was supposed to be George Cosmatos of Rambo 2 and Tombstone fame.
Yeah, and he walked off the film.
He walked off, and Timothy Dalton and Isabella Rossellini, who were both supposed to be in this film, they both followed his departure.
Yeah.
And apparently, according to IMDb, Dalton filed a lawsuit against the Salkinds for breach of contract and fraud, stating they did not provide a bank guarantee for his $2.5 million salary.
And you think you and I have problems when we're shooting a movie, and it's funny.
And we do, but our problems are like miniature versions of these great big problems that these guys have.
This is a $50 million problem, of which Marlon Brando took $5 million. We'll get onto that.
And asked for his name to be removed as well.
Yeah, they didn't do that. In fact, they gave him top billing.
Yeah.
Both on all the posters and on the credits. And because I don't think legally he was allowed to ask for his name to be removed. I mean, one of the things that struck me about this film, and others have said it, and I think you agreed with me, is that it's a film that was made in 91. It was released in 1992. It feels like, and it's shot like, and the quality of it and the acting and everything that I can think of feels like a movie that was shot in 79 and maybe might have just creeped into 1980, but it would have sat pretty comfortably in even 1975. It doesn't feel like a film that was made in 1992.
Not at all. As aesthetically, audibly, like I said, the acting styles. Yeah, it does. It feels like they transported a team of filmmakers from the 70s, popped them into the 90s, and said, "Guys, make a film in the 90s." And they just took all of their attitudes, sentiments, shot structures, storytelling styles, acting styles, and made that in the 90s. And here we are going, "What the hell is this?"
Well, let's. I'm laughing thinking about this. Let's say what we like about it first. This should be a relatively short section.
Yeah, okay, you go first.
Thanks, man. You're a true friend. Okay, so what did I like about it? Although I hear mixed things, I think there are some actors in the film who do okay with the material that they're given. And are trying their best, and I think that includes Hugo Blick, who wrote that article. He's not a big name actor, but I did watch his scenes with interest, and I thought he did. Considering, I thought he did all right, but he's not really contributing or saving the film. I'm not saying that in any way. I thought Rachel Ward as the Queen Isabel opposite Tom Selleck's King. I'm going to come on to him in a second. I thought she was pretty decent. But again, here's a great still. Again, she feels like she's in a different movie, but I thought she was perfectly fine. There's Marlon Brando brooding.
He's probably reading his cue card.
He probably is. I hated Tom Selleck when I first watched this movie. I quite liked him in it this time. Now, that may well be the fact that I'm watching the film many moons later, and it feels quite fun to see Tom Selleck in big 80s bangs playing a king in a role that he's completely miscast in.
Oh, miscast.
Shockingly miscast at time. I think it's rose-tinted glasses, me thinking this is actually quite fun watching Tom Selleck in this part now. So for me, that was fun now. I hated him in it then. So I'm not praising it retroactively so much as I'm praising the entertainment that it gave me in the present day, if that makes sense. Robert Davi is an interesting actor. He's not an actor with huge range, and maybe that's unfair to him because he's always cast as villains or similar villains,
or crooked cops or hard-ass cops. He was in Die Hard.
Indeed, he's great in Die Hard. He's perfectly cast in Die Hard. It's interesting reading the article because he phoned up Hugo Blick and got him down into the bar.
That's right.
And
sucking on a cigar.
Yeah, sucking on a cigar. And what part are you playing, Robert? Says Hugo. I'm playing Martin Pinzon. And Hugo says, I didn't know he was a baddie. Davi's eyes narrow dangerously. He's not, he snarls. He's the heart of the movie. Without him, Columbus would be nothing. Look at this. And he takes out a well-thumbed piece of paper from his black snake-skinned wallet and opens it carefully before handing it to me. What is it, I ask. A review of my last movie, Amazon. I begin to read it. Don't read the whole thing, he says. Just read the last bit. The reviewer is inferring that the mantle of Lee Marvin is soon to be passed to Robert Davi. That's great, Robert. I hand it back and watch him read it once more before carefully folding it away. I'm the leading man, not some second fiddle, he says.
Wow, that's a very wounded, desperate ego there.
And then I watch him bring the Havana to his lips, intent on one last triumphant pull. But it's gone out. He must have finally starved the bar of oxygen.
That's probably the best. That's probably the best story in that whole article. In that one paragraph, summed up this fragile, delicate ego of a fading actor. That's right, Agent Johnson. Agent Johnson.
Yeah.
Agent Johnson, yes. No relation.
I like Robert Davi as an actor. I think he's perfectly good in in the roles I've seen him in. And in some ways, I felt he did a pretty good job in his scenes. He put a lot in it. I could see look, it might be down to his ego, but I did see that he was trying to really do something with the character. He was trying to do something with the material. He was trying to make his character a bit of a conscience to the very, very bland Columbus that I'll let Matt describe shortly. But I didn't hate him in this movie. I thought he was okay. I remembered when I went to see the film, I thought he was one of the better things in it. I still think he's one of the better things in it. I can't say that he's good in it because it's so uneven. You can't really judge him correctly because nothing in the film fuses together. The action doesn't fuse. The editing doesn't fuse.
The performances certainly don't.
No. Nigel...
And Robert Davi is... Like, look at his face. Like, he leans towards being a villain, and he plays that well. But they cast him in a role that's clearly not a villain. And I know that sometimes we can cast against type, but sometimes it doesn't work. And I really feel it didn't work. And he tried, but it doesn't gel. And I think that's
he might have been better off being cast in the role that Oliver Cotton had, which is as Harana, which was Benicio del Toro's father.
Oh yeah.
And I mean, spoiler alert for anybody who dares to watch this film. Harana and Harana's son end up killing each other, therefore proving that they're mortal. Therefore, the natives know that these people aren't gods. Therefore, the natives rebel against them, kill them. I mean, yeah, Catherine Zeta-Jones, I'm not going to comment on. I'll let you cover her, especially as I kind of worked with her once. But Oliver Cotton, who's a good actor, very strong face, never needs to do very much in any role he's in. His character's not given a lot to work with. I felt that if they had developed the scenes between him and his son properly, that could have been a really interesting storyline, and therefore the the face-off between those two at the end of the movie could have been more interesting, as could have been the downfall. Peter Guinness is a perfectly good actor that's in it, very good character actor, always interesting to watch.
He was in Alien 3.
He was in Alien 3. I like Peter Guinness.
Was your mate Phil Davies in Alien 3?
My mate Phil Davis was in Alien 3.
I woke up this morning seeing that image of that prisoner going, "This thing is really pissed off," and I went, "Oh, that's Phil Davies." It hit me finally. I don't know why I thought of that.
Michael Gothard, who was also a villain previously in For Your Eyes Only. In fact, he has one of the most gruesome deaths of a villain. Bond kicks him over the edge of the cliff while he's trapped in a car. He plays kind of Brando's number 2. We'll come on to Brando in a minute. Again, Gothard can be interesting in the right role, but he's an actor with extremely limited range. Very sadly, he committed suicide in 1992. I remember reading about that.
Oh, wow. So the same year that this came out.
Possibly that was the reason. I mean, I shouldn't make light of that sort of thing because, we've all had our difficult days.
Jesus, so he did not last long. Oh, that's
it is sad. One of his last films, which is a shame.
What a way to go out. Ugh.
You may remember him from Warlords of Atlantis. Did you see that movie with sort of Ray Harryhausen kind of movie?
Oh, no. I'm thinking of, I saw a film called Raiders of Atlantis once. That was bad.
Oh, no, that's the Atlantis Interceptors you're thinking of. Yes, that was very bad. This is Christopher Hunter, who I spoke to earlier today. And he was in the movie. He played one of the guys in the crew. He climbs up the sails at one point, has kind of a sort of crazy fit. He's in the film pretty much the whole way through the shoot. And it was actually him that reminded me that Hugo Blick was the guy who wrote the article. So that's how I was able to trace it. So thank you, Christopher, for replying to my inquiry. And he's actually doing a show at the minute at the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith. It's a really well-rated show. Do go along and check out Christopher Hunter's show. It's kind of a take on a Shakespeare monologue. Well worth your time. There's not many really anyone else in this that I want to flag up, but Stephen Fletcher, that's not Steve Fletcher, is it? As in Dexter Fletcher, surely? No, it's not. It's different Fletcher. Okay. So, yeah, I mean, did Marlon bring the film its saving grace, Matt? What do you think?
Absolutely not. I mean, blink and you miss him. I mean, you notice him, but he's just so irrelevant to the movie as a character, really. He's not. He's sort of like just there. And it's so lazy, as most of his stuff was in that time period. I think interesting, you talking about the film as you're mentioning the roles and all the different characters. I only watched it a few days ago, and already the movie's dissolving from my mind. Like, I can't grasp the scenes. I can't remember characters and moments and scenes. It's all just this sort of fuzzy blur. And I think that's what like you said, as a whole, nothing gelled. It didn't knit together, and so the film becomes this massive emptiness. Even though it's full of stuff happening, you cannot remember or place it or quite. It's just that bad. It's really bad.
It's interesting that a foreign title, and I'm thinking this must be a Spanish title, is Cristobal Colon, which just suggests something else entirely. And they all obviously heard you and
Christopher's ass. That's what it should be.
And they stuck pictures on the poster to maybe kind of, flag up that there's some actors in it. They had to put George Corraface on, who was predominantly a French theatrical actor that not many people had heard of. He replaced Timothy Dalton. 3 days notice he had.
Which is unfair, but still, he was lousy.
It's unfair. He was lousy. You could tell he was trying, I think. I think it would be unfair to say...
Oh, look, everyone's trying. Like, you could tell everyone's trying. Just say everyone's failing. Like, it's... there was a comment just given by Jim D. He's just said, Alien 3, despite its production problems for me, become a bit of a mini classic. Is it as good as the previous two? No, but still has much merit. Jim, I absolutely agree with you. I love Alien 3. I think it is, while of course it will never beat the other two, I still think it's a very worthy film despite its problems. And I think if more people gave it a bit more time, I think
the director's cut of it is a much better film.
Oh, absolutely.
Without a doubt.
Oh, it's a much better film, and I'm so glad we've got it. But it is still a beautiful, beautiful movie, artistically done. And over the years, I've warmed to it a lot more. I didn't like it when I first saw it, but now I put it on regularly and love Alien 3.
I'd agree with you. I'm in that camp of I didn't like it at first. I kind of wanted a film that was closer to the second one, and I also got to read the William Gibson script, which was supposed to be the film they were going to make, and then ultimately got rejected. I would love to have seen that film, which had Hicks in, and the big issue I still have is that Hicks and Newt are just killed off, and all the payoff at the end of the previous film is, their pods could have ended up somewhere else on the planet. They didn't find them, and you could have had exactly the same movie and just done that.
Yeah,
just because they didn't want to get the actors back. I just think that would have been an easier way.
Poor little Newt. I mean, that was 1985 when they shot Aliens, and this was 1991 or something when they...
Yeah, well, it came out around the time of this because...
It did. But the actress who played Newt would have looked completely different. She can't go into a pod looking like a 10-year-old and then come out looking like a 16-year-old.
Oh, well, unless it malfunctioned and she somehow aged. I mean, this is science fiction after all.
Oh, okay. Yeah, but then you're right. You're back... I don't know.
No, I know. I would have just... I wouldn't have killed them off. I would have just, their pods landed separately. Ripley's landed here. It got retrieved. Don't know where the other ones are. Maybe they've been facehugged. Maybe not. That could have been a... Blomkamp's. Yeah, I know about Blomkamp's version as well, Jim.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not go down the Alien rabbit hole. We're doing Alien 3. We're doing Alien 3.
Let's do Alien 3 because I think it's a great film that needs a lot of discussion. I've got lots to say. So please join us, Jim D, when we discuss, is Alien 3 actually a much unfairly maligned classic?
All right, I tell you what, maybe we'll do that next Tuesday. Maybe if you're free and I'm not too knackered from rehearsals, which I'm never too knackered to do it. I'm never too knackered to do a stream with Matt. Lifts me up, actually. So, George Corraface is the unknown who is cast with 3 days' notice.
Mm-hmm.
He kind of looks the part, but then he kind of doesn't. It's a bit of a weird.
No, he looks like a soap opera star.
Yeah,
thrust into this time of Columbus, and you do not believe him. I think for me, the movie, I knew we were in trouble from the very first scene. And I think the way your movie opens, the minute he gets off that ship and uses his whip to trip up that guy trying to nick something.
What was that about? You
go, oh my God, this movie's in trouble already. You can already tell.
It was like somebody watched Indiana Jones and said, you know what would be good? Let's show that he's good with a whip. It's there's no setup and payoff in this movie.
No.
Almost none at all.
No.
There might be some minor religious things, but basically There's nothing with characters that's set up and then pays off later, apart from the guys who are trying to sink the ship, and even that isn't very well done.
No.
But
I mean,
yeah,
look at this. Look at these costumes, right? Look at them. They look like something that the Shakespeare company wears in a theatrical play. Like,
yeah,
they're pristine, they're perfect, they're all black, they're all matching, it's hideous. It doesn't look like reality, and I think that's the thing that distinguishes the two films completely, is their sense of reality.
Yeah, the production design on the two films is not even comparable. We'll get to that.
Look at Columbus's scarf, right? I would wear that scarf today down the street, and I would look very, very modern and nice. And that white shirt underneath it. Honestly, you could wear that to a party today. It's so directed and art designed. It doesn't look real.
In this particular shot, you've actually got Nigel Terry on the left, who some people may remember was in Excalibur. In fact, he was the lead.
Nigel, he was too. There he is.
And
wow, he's young there.
He's not. I've never. I'm sorry to say it because he is deceased. I've never seen him in something where I've gone, God, he's amazing.
I don't. I think he's a very poor actor, personally.
I'm sorry, mate. I'm gonna join you on that. I thought he was terrible in Excalibur. I
couldn't stand him in Excalibur. I thought he let the movie down.
So let the movie down. If you'd had a really strong lead actor in that part, that film would be 10 times better than it was.
Oh, easily. He was. You just like, why of everyone in the world did you cast Nigel Terry? He was just the worst. He didn't look good. Sorry, Nigel. He didn't look good. He didn't sound good, and he didn't act good.
I have to say that his acting is only like 10% better in this movie.
He's one of those people. It's like, how did you get to where you? How did he get there?
Yeah, well, I think you and I know the answer to that question, but let's not go there. But Nigel Terry on the left here, and this actor on the right, whose name escapes me, and I think this is Chris Hunter, who I spoke to earlier today. These are the two bad guys who are sort of conspiring to sink the ship, and they kind of have a bit of a plot. And it's kind of set up that Nigel Terry's going on the ship and the other guy isn't. Did you notice that in the plot? How am I going to get my money for you? Don't worry, they'll know who you are. But then he's on the ship with him anyway. It's like, but it's set up that he's not going on the journey with him because he's worried he's not going to get his money. Yeah. And then the guy who hired him to commit shenanigans and try and sink ships and things is actually with him on the journey. Why, if you were hiring the guy to sabotage a mission that's going far and away from civilization, as the guy hiring the guy who's going to damage and potentially sink the ship so they don't return, why would you go on the journey with him?
I know.
No sense at all.
It's a suicide run.
Exactly, and it's
what to make sure he finished the job as you sink beneath the waves. You go, I'm really glad the job got done. Blah 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 blah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea was to sabotage the ship so that they turned around and came back. But I mean, even so, the guy who hired him wouldn't go along, would he? Because there's always a chance that could come out. Catherine Zeta-Jones as the love interest, a story not particularly handled well. We don't get a sense of how they first met when they're coupled. It's just 1 minute he sees her and he's not really with her. The next scene he's kind of with her, and the next thing we hear is she's having a baby. Is that a fair arc of that?
And it's I don't know, the way it's shot, and it's creepy and weird. It's not romantic.
Do you remember the scene where he's like touching her breasts?
Yeah,
he's got like clothes on and he's got his hands on her breasts and he's kind of kneading them like they're dough in a bakery.
Yeah, and it's really gross. How can you make a scene with someone kneading Catherine Zeta-Jones' breast a gross scene? How do you do that? That's a special kind of incompetence.
There's no tenderness or sort of like, I don't remember him kind of lovingly stroking. I mean, maybe he did and I missed it, but I don't remember him like lovingly stroking her cheek, or it's just this kind of, and he's talking as he's doing it. It's like this dialogue scene. And I was watching that going, man, this is directed pretty badly, but it was probably just a case of, should I, John, should I touch her boobs? Yeah, sure. Just, but on top of the dress, let's keep it. Remember, we're going for PG. Okay, so I'm not like ripping the clothes. It's just like I'm pretending. Yeah, sure, that'll work. I don't know.
And action, and that's lunch. Yeah.
Marlon Brando, almost all of his shots you can tell were done when other actors weren't there.
Yeah. It's like because they had like what 2 or 3 days with him, and then they just.
I think they had a day and a half.
Yeah, and they had $5 million, day and a half, and he did all his things with an earpiece.
I mean, that's incredible when you and I are like struggling to raise hundreds of thousands of pounds to shoot a half decent movie, and they blew 5 million of this film's budget. So what's that? Is that 5% of the budget overall, or is that 10? No, it's 10%.
10%.
10% of the budget on one guy whose career was on the wane to come for a couple of days.
Yeah.
And it was.
This is why I say the movie reeks of producer thinking, not director thinking.
Yeah.
This is how they think. The Soul Kinds had this way of approaching a production, and they did not respect the artistic approach to filmmaking. They approached it like this business, I guess, because they're businessmen. But I mean, the fact that they kicked off and the director who sadly died recently, the director of Superman, Richard
Donner.
Richard Donner, they kicked him off of Superman 2. They fought with their strongest card. Between him and Christopher Reeve, they were the best things that they had. And look what Donner did. And they got rid of him, which shows that they had no respect for exactly about who makes a movie. Because let's be honest, in the end, it's the director that makes the movie. And if you don't let the director make the movie, it's just you're pissing money against the wall. As Jim D says, $5 million in 90s money as well.
Yeah, man. I mean, how much is that today?
That is daylight robbery on behalf of...
It's got to be somewhere between 7 and 10 today.
It's crazy. Easily double. And that is just, it's disgusting. And I think what I really notice about this film from a writer's... I've written, as you can see from my poster back here, I've written an historical film and directed an historical film before, where you take something from history and you have to adapt it into a movie. It's a very difficult thing to do because you've got to know the right thing to focus on. And you've also got to tell it in a way that it doesn't just sort of just feel like this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. And I feel like these people read a biography of Christopher Columbus and they just wrote the script in order of things that happened. Oh, this happened, this happened. But there was no actual understanding of the whole picture and what they wanted to say, or the arc or the character of Columbus. There was no sense of any of what the movie was about. It was just a series of events.
The film doesn't it doesn't have a cohesive narrative. It doesn't have
things happen, but there's no story.
No, there's no structure to it. And I mean, it definitely was a script that could benefit from a Hollywood structure, much as I hate those. But
even if you're going to, like, we all expect biopics and real life stories to have a little bit of ebb and flow and to be a little more episodic.
Yeah.
But there was no journey. For a movie called The Journey, there was no journey. It's about a journey, but there's no journey. The characters, I don't remember.
It's called The Discovery. The Discovery.
The Discovery. That's right.
Well, the only thing they discover is the island, which is part of the whichever group of islands it is. I forget, the Virgin Islands or whichever group it turned out to be. And they discover that.
You don't get that till much later in the film, right?
Yeah, I mean, I noticed I was clocking things, and I noticed they undertake their journey. So they start boarding the vessel. I think it was about 33 minutes in.
Yeah, which is probably not too dissimilar to the 1492.
No, and I think that's fair. That I mean, a film about Columbus should break down into a 3-act structure fairly simply, which should be first act, preparations for journey and getting underway. Second act, at sea, all the things that go wrong. Third act, we discover the islands, shit happens. And then I guess you could add another act from there. 1492 does it more like a 5-act thing. but this is those 3 acts. And then there's a very brief part on the journey home and some wrap up scenes when they get back, and a couple of very quick bits that surmise what happened to those people that left behind. I mean, that's really badly handled. You just have a cut to, it's like they were going to show a big battle scene, but they didn't. So they just filmed one between 2 guys, and then it cuts back to Spain, and then it cuts back to the island. There's a big long panning shot, and everybody's dead, with a lot of burning and spears in them and this kind of thing. All the chemistry of a wart and a potato together, these two.
But I mean, but go back to that still and look, have a look again. Look,
yeah.
Honestly, that could be a still from a 1960s Sinbad movie.
I was just thinking that. She looks like a princess out of a Sinbad film. Yeah, that could so be a Ray Harryhausen.
Yeah, one of those 1970s Ray Harryhausen Sinbad films. It doesn't feel like the 90s at all.
No.
And this is, it's just, the screenplay is so unfocused and it doesn't have any nuance to it. And they've thrown all these actors together, most of them miscast, and there's no sense. And this is why when you're watching it, your brain just phases out and you're going, why can't I attach to anything? Because it's shockingly directed.
If you have to look at the movie and go, what was the one moment where you were like on the edge of your seat, or I can think of 5 sequences from the movie The Untouchables, for example, which was made 4 years earlier from this, that I could say right now, on the edge of my seat, amazing sequences, love watching them again and again and again and again and again and again.
It sticks with you, yeah.
I can't think of a single one from this film.
No.
I can think of lots of moments of, oh my God, that bit's terrible.
Yeah.
Shark, it's horrible. But I just like...
Yeah, no, you can't. There's nothing in the... That's why days later, I'm trying to grab at the film, and all I can remember is how the movie made me feel, and it was cringy. All I felt was cringe. I felt like I was watching people embarrass themselves because it was so cringeworthy, the acting and the wooden directing, and clearly money on the screen. Like, there's an equal amount of money being thrown at the screen, or at least on the production, as 1492, and yet you cannot, in one sense, compare the 2 movies. They are about the exact same thing, but they are totally different.
I mean, the movie, the money, we'll get on to 4092 in just a second. The money isn't on screen in Christopher Columbus: The Discovery.
No.
They've got 3 ships that look like 3 real ships.
Yeah. They've got actors, they've got costumes, they've got obviously international sets and locations, but
I mean, most of the stuff on the ships was shot in the tank in Malta, and the ship was actually on rollers being pushed back and forth, so it wasn't even in real water. So I'll give them some credit that stuff actually looked like they were going out to sea, and it was quite well done. And then I'm guessing that the shots of the 3 boats at sea must have been 3 large models, I think.
Okay.
Because I don't think you ever see more than 2 full-size ships in a shot together. And that's always partial, side by side.
Okay.
I don't think there's ever a shot of 3 full-size ships.
Okay.
And I'm guessing it's model work. So the model work's good. So because the model work is good, and I'm assuming it's model work, I'll give it 1 out of 10, 1 for the model work. On IMDb, you've convinced me. I think my rating for it needs to be lower. It had a budget of $45 million. It made just $8 million.
Yeah, big bomb. Actually, I think it had a budget closer to 50, because it does say on IMDb that earlier Signcon was able to secure a budget of $50 million.
That's right. Yeah, it was a $42 million budget that was being slashed in favor of a TV miniseries, but then it was elevated when Ilya secured a budget of $50 million. I bet his investors were upset.
So anywhere between 47 and 50. Well, look, if you take out Marlon Brando's fee, what have you got left? A $42, $45 million movie. That's it.
Well, I wonder how much the producers paid themselves as well.
Of course.
Yeah.
That sort of thing does happen, doesn't it? When producers
Yeah.
pay
Oh,
themselves
yeah.
more.
I think by the time the producers have been paid and the above the line cast, so probably
Yeah.
your Catherine Zeta-Jones, maybe 3 or 4 others. Tom Selleck probably had at least, I'm going to guess for Tom Selleck, at least $500,000 to $1 million, probably.
Yep. Back in those days. Yep.
Yeah. You know, I mean, they probably got him cheaper because he screwed up on Indiana Jones. But yeah, I think probably by the time above the line was taken off of that, you probably get it. Now you're coming down to 25.
Yeah, yeah, because it starts looking like it, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It doesn't look like it. I mean, and look, we're not the only people in the world who think this film is terrible. Like, this movie has a 7% critic rating on Rotten Tomatoes. Not that Rotten Tomatoes means much, but it's 7% for critics and 17% for audience. So I think it's fair to say that this is a widely panned, deservedly so bad movie.
Needless to say, Matt and I don't recommend Christopher Columbus: The Discovery, apart from the fact that I found Tom Selleck mildly entertaining when I watched it this time around, and I thought some of the supporting cast did their best. We both agree that on every other level, the score is unmemorable, the production design is terrible. It looks shot. Even the stuff in Malta looks like it was all just shot in one street and one staircase. They didn't make use of Malta at all.
No, it has. I think if you want to see what not to do with a historical epic, if you're going to write a historical epic or direct one, watch this as your do not. This is your do not do movie. Do not do this.
It's a good how not to write a script film as well. I've got to say,
yeah, absolutely.
It's a really good how not to write a script movie.
And to those producers out there, how not to produce a movie. Don't go in with the soul kind attitude.
Now this one is a bit more complicated, so let's move on to 1492. And
and let's
I've still got the false accounts thing up. I forgot that I created that, so let's just pop that on there. There we go.
Before we go into 1492, I think we should address the elephant in the room when it comes to a Christopher Columbus film.
You mean Carry On Columbus?
No, not that one. I think when we're discussing these films, I think it's fair to say that neither film represents the true story of Christopher Columbus well, the character of Christopher Columbus, and they are very loose with the history, or at least in the representation of the character of Christopher Columbus. I think we can all agree that in the years since, Columbus shouldn't be really looked at as a hero. He was a terrible person. He did terrible things. So let's get that out of the way now. We're not saying that these films we're looking at them as films only, and we agree that no, they are not good representations of history. So let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. I think the right Christopher Columbus movie has yet to be made. And I think actually the best way to do a Columbus film would be to tell it from the natives' point of view.
I totally agree.
Arriving and
absolutely.
That would be a really interesting film.
Yeah, so you get a character like someone from, like, I can see a character like in Apocalypto, like a family, a man, and then seeing them coming, and then him and his family being affected by Columbus and all of the that's a good film.
That'd be a good film, and you could do like a kind of spin-off Predator type movie where a squad of Columbus's men go into the jungle to hunt him down, and he uses a combination of kind of, you know, sort of jungle-like traps and spears and arrows and pits and things and creatures to kill them all off. That'd actually be a pretty good movie. That
the Predators, they've got those old pistols. Remember in the end of Predator 2, he gets given one of those old flintlock pistols as a trophy.
That would be a good movie, though. You could do a good Predator kind of movie with like a native guy.
Well, they sort of did it already
by like Spaniard traders and him kind of protecting it. That's a good film right there.
But they sort of already did that with Prey, didn't they? They sort of did that.
I guess. So.
They used French trappers and
But it's got a predator in it. I'm talking about doing it without the predator, making the Indian the predator effectively. See what I mean?
Oh, so you're actually bringing in the alien?
Yeah, no alien in it. I'm saying you could do a predator-like movie,
right?
Except that the predator is basically the native Indian, and he's the one getting the better of the Spaniards, or
right. Yes,
or
that would be a good film. That would be a good film. But that is the proper way to do a Columbus film, not to frame Columbus as the hero. Because how do you present, unless you want a movie that tears Columbus apart? But then again, how do you get audiences to watch a movie where you follow a character that you essentially hate? So, elephant out of the room. We don't agree that these films represent Columbus or the story accurately. We're only looking at them as films.
So while I dash quickly to the bathroom, and also I remember I wanted to try and have my CD of the score here. I'm going to have a quick look for it. Why don't you give your rating for 1492 and explain why in quick summation? I'm going to turn the volume up so I still hear you from the other end of the house, and I'll be right back.
No worries, man. Alrighty, so 1492 Conquest of Paradise. This film's directed by Ridley Scott, and from a film perspective, I think this film has been widely criticized as one of Ridley Scott's, worst films, and I think a lot of that comes from, of course, the history not being represented properly and the story being, so inaccurate, especially with the treatment of the character of Columbus and the liberties taken, which is all fair criticism, so I'm not even going to go into it. But I'm just talking about it as a film. I would have to say that this film, for me, easily gets a 7 out of 10. I think it is I haven't watched this film since like the late 90s. I think I watched it on VHS, and I haven't seen it since. This film is got to be one of the most beautifully shot, artistically directed, stunning looking Ridley Scott films out there, and he's got a lot of really good films. Like this is a world, and this is an era, this is a time he excels in. All his films, Gladiator, Kingdom of Heaven, The Last Duel, Exodus, all his movies look great, but this has got to be one of his most beautiful looking movies. It's not a perfect film by any means. It's got some narrative problems, and it's a bit choppy, and it's a bit disjointed and things like that. But as a piece of art, this is a stunning film and absolutely worth watching for that fact alone. I think it's very engaging. I think the characters are strong. It is extremely violent. It is very, very affecting, and it sinks into your soul. And I think that is helps heavily due to the music. Is just by Vangelis. It's just one of the best soundtracks ever written. I think it's an extremely worthy movie, and it is just the polar opposite of the other Christopher Columbus film. This is what happens when an artist makes a movie, and Ridley Scott is absolutely an artist, and this is an artist's film, and you can see him painting with film. He is a master of visuals. So one of the things that struck me the most about watching 1492, this is a 1992 movie, but I shit you not, this movie looks like it was shot yesterday, and it looks as good as any movie shot today. It is stunning.
Yeah, I heard everything you said while I was running around looking for the soundtrack, which I do have by Vangelis. Couldn't find it. Did find the soundtrack to Alien 3 though.
Yeah, Elliot Goldenthal, awesome. I love that soundtrack.
I have got another box of CDs in the shed. Clearly 1492 didn't make it to the living room section. But yeah, you're right. I mean, let's say from the beginning that the film is not historically accurate. It's got a lot to answer for in that camp, as does Braveheart and many other films.
Yeah,
it's been criticised for propagating that Spanish colonialism was really bad over things like British colonialism and the other countries that went to the other islands, setting that up to be good. I'm not sure that justification is fair, because we don't see the other countries doing that.
No, we don't. We don't
That's
see it
not
at all.
covered in the movie, so I'm not sure that's a fair criticism. It is just Columbus's journey in his country and his countrymen that we see. So I don't agree with that criticism, which is something I did read. But yeah, Matt's right. I agree with you in terms of the quality of the production. This is in a completely different league. And when I saw these films, I mean, just in that one shot alone.
Look at that. It's just unbelievable.
You can tell the difference between the two movies.
Yeah.
And
You've got the same budget, remember. You can't say, they had more money. They did it. They had less money. And Ridley Scott pulled this out of a slightly smaller budget with exactly the same story at exactly the same time in history. And that's the difference, I think, between a workman director like John Glenn, who was thrown in at the last second, and a truly artistic director like Ridley Scott, who can craft visuals that are just stunning. And also knows how to tell a story, and he also knows how to direct a scene. I don't know who wrote this. Who wrote it?
We'll get on to that in a second, but just sticking with the casting, the biggest name he had in it at the time was Sigourney Weaver. She would have been bigger than Gerard Depardieu, who still wasn't. He was a big name. He'd done a couple of things, but
he was more of a French actor, wasn't he?
He was a French actor who'd done a couple of Hollywood hits like Green Card.
But he was very much on the rise to the A-list, but he wasn't on it yet.
No, and I mean, and he also didn't straddle that world too comfortably. It wasn't like everyone in America would go and see a Gerard Depardieu film.
No.
But everybody did know who Sigourney Weaver was.
Yeah.
So she probably had the biggest paycheck on the film. I mean,
she's not in it a great deal.
No, so she probably did the Marlon Brando, but for much more effective money and probably for a slightly longer shooting days.
Yeah, and she was actually really damn good.
She's very good. She's very good.
Watching it again, my memory of this was that it was like, why'd you put Sigourney Weaver in it? She didn't fit it. But watching it again, I was like, hang on, she is really good in that. Also,
compare this arrival shot on the island to the one we looked at earlier.
Yeah.
This is like men arriving, thankful that they're alive, in costumes that are reeked with damp and sweat and grime and dirt from being on the ship for a week on end. Whereas the other shot is like 4 men have entered from stage left.
Yeah.
From their dressing room.
Yeah.
Onto the
with
beach.
their hair done. We're all in matching clothing. Whereas this is what I think what Ridley Scott does so well with his film is he creates the reality of the time, the turbulence, the violence of nature, the violence of the men, the weatheredness of the clothing. Look at his hair. He looks like a guy from that period.
And this is actually this is a shot from not when he first arrives on the island. This is when they come back.
When they return.
And they land with larger forces. And in this shot, he is slightly more well-groomed because the journey is considered to have been easier.
Yeah, because they knew that they were going to arrive.
They knew they were going to land. They knew where they were going. They had the right number of provisions and more ships. This is from first arriving with meeting the natives. I thought the natives were extremely well done in this film
Very
as well.
Well done.
Right.
And this is what Ridley does well is world building. Watching this film, you just believe what you're seeing. You believe that this is a primitive forest, that these people, that you have gone back and you have witnessed this world. And I think, even though I think the history has been wrongly portrayed, or more so Christopher Columbus himself has been wrongly portrayed as more of a sympathetic character when really he should be a villain. The destruction of the native people is what still comes through, that they did come, and it was terrible. They basically put the blame on people like this character here, played by I love this guy.
Moxica, played by Michael Winnicott, who of course was riding high off being the sub-villain to Alan Rickman's Sheriff of Nottingham in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which came out a year earlier.
And he was also the next year following. He was the bad guy in Three Musketeers with Kiefer Sutherland.
He was. God, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, with a deep voice and the moustache. He's got to be one of the best movie villains. Is this actor Michael? I think he's great.
Yeah, him and Tom Clancy from Shawshank Redemption are both they both had a lot of similar roles. It was like you could tell that casting directors were like, well, if we can't get Clancy Brown.
Oh,
we can't get Clancy Brown. Can we get Michael Winnicott? And there was one or other of them were always in very similar films at very similar time in very similar roles.
He's sort of like the Basil Rathbone of the 90s, is this guy.
He is a bit.
Because he always plays the villain, and he's so damn good at it. Like, this character was... I think when I watched this film as a child, I was only about 13, I think, when I watched it on video. And I don't know why, but my parents let me watch it. This film was like nothing I'd ever seen. It was so violent. It was so real. And I was so disgusted with some of the things that I saw as a kid. I couldn't believe it. And it was that character of Moxica. He haunted my dreams. He was such a vile character. He was so scary.
Because he chops off the man's hand who he accuses of being a thief.
Yeah.
And of course, the natives have never seen anybody treat each other that way. And that was extremely well handled. There's a line in the movie which I really love, which I think sums up the whole story of Columbus and everything wrong with it, which I think they got right, which is when one of the natives towards the end of the movie, when it's all gone wrong in the colony and there's been a big storm, bad omens, things are burning, and the native guy who's been like his translator and his friend discards his Western tropes and he puts on his old garb and he's going to leave. And I think Columbus sees him and I can't remember the line that Columbus. I can't remember what Columbus says to him, something like that. And he turns around and says, "You never learnt my language."
Yeah.
And then he left. And that line, "You never learnt my language. I learnt yours, but you never were bothered about learning my language or my customs." I mean, and that's not true. A lot of the men that went there did try and learn. So not a lot of them, but certainly some of them really did embrace those things. But the majority of them just saw the slaves or the tribesmen, the local tribesmen, as slaves.
Yeah.
They saw them as slaves. They treated them as slaves. That was the problem. And that line sums it up. It's a great line.
Absolutely. And I think that so different to the other Christopher Columbus film, you don't get any of that subtext or social undercurrent stuff. Jim D says, "You never learned to speak my language." Yeah, that's exactly
I couldn't remember.
Right.
Yeah, I thought it was you.
Gerard Depardieu's character in this, his version of Columbus is a flawed man.
He's more conflicted and he makes mistakes whereas George Corraface just comes on and says, "Don't I look pretty?" Yeah.
And I'm Columbus and I'm noble it's almost, that's a way more offensive. At least this character he's shown to be an idealist guy, but he slips into and by the end of the film he's become, I guess, depressed. And
he starts off as an idealist who wants to discover the new world, and I think for him the journey is the important thing. So it's a bit of a Lord of the Rings metaphor. When he gets there, he's quickly corrupted into showing his achievements so that he can justify his journey to the people back home. Therefore, he gets more seduced into the trappings of what it means to be governor, and then I think that then leads to the depression because he realizes he's no longer an explorer. Now he's just an accountant. Yeah.
And also at the very beginning, he sees those public executions and he's disgusted by them, rightfully, and he ushers his kid away. Don't look at that. This is a horrible thing of our society. But then at the end of the movie, he's now sitting there ordering public executions.
That's a good poster. I like that poster. Because
Nice
you've
one.
got the first native that he meets. You've got that beautiful shot of when they arrive, and that is very well done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it shows
that's the UK. That was the UK poster. That's the poster on my CD.
Right. Well, at least you've got a human on it.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But I think this film shows the. I think this film shows. I'm not saying it's historically accurate, but I think it does a pretty good job in showing that their arrival to this new world was a bad thing.
Yeah,
and they screwed up. They mismanaged it, and the conquest of paradise was a negative thing, and the destruction to the natives, and it was a horrible. It's not a glorified. They do not glorify Columbus. They do not glorify the discovery of the Americas. They actually show it to be a terrible thing. Yeah. Where they went wrong is that they made Columbus more of a victim of that, less a perpetrator, when in reality he was more of a perpetrator.
Yeah.
But as a movie, if we were just to say, right, this is a fictional film, as a movie, I think his journey and his character, he has an arc, and it's an interesting one, and it makes for a great viewing. So if you can take the history out of it and just look at it as a film, I think it's a very worthy film. It's really well written, and his performance is great, and he has a good story to tell here.
I think it's a good, extremely well produced, extremely well acted, gritty, visually stunning.
Very
movie.
gritty.
Is it a great film? I'm going to say just shy of no, because my rating on IMDb for this would be the same as you, 7. 6 or 7 is a good film. 8 and above is a great film for me.
I don't think it goes into the realm of great.
No.
There are aspects of this that I give 10 out of 10.
Oh yeah, I mean the cinematography, 10 out of 10. The score, 10 out of 10.
10.
The acting, probably between 8.5 to 9 out of 10, I would say.
Cinematography, 10 out of 10.
Yeah, 10 out of 10. Yeah.
You cannot. The art direction. These are so faultless that these are better than movies today. It's so good.
Is it a victim of trying to do too much? Is that where, because the other film has a much, I'm not praising it, let's be clear, has a condensed story which is preparing for the journey, arriving on the island, and then there's kind of an epilogue, and that's the structure of that film. It's crap because it doesn't do any of those things well, but that's the structure of that movie.
Yeah, it's got this looks at the story a lot further.
I think
1492 is better, because what it does is one of the biggest things that makes a good film is if characters change. We have to have a character that starts like this and then ends like this, unless it's a flat arc story, and there's plenty of good flat arc stories. But Christopher needs an arc, and in this film, you see him go from the passionate idealist that we totally get behind to the disillusioned idealist at the end of the film, who's realized that he's he destroyed paradise. His quest for discovery of paradise and his passion destroyed the thing he loved. And I think that's a powerful thing. And you can't do it if you don't do the whole thing. And that's why the other Christopher Columbus film is so boring, because it's just him figuring out who's going to go with him, and we're on the journey. It just takes too long to get to the island.
No, I mean, I think, I mean, this one also takes a fair while for them to get there, but maybe.
But it's so much more interesting to watch.
It is. Oh, listen, everything about the film is so much more interesting. Writing credits, you asked earlier, only one writer, Rosalind Bosch.
Right.
I'm not familiar with her. Let's have a quick look.
I'm not, but she was very good.
Fine-looking woman. In that photo, she's only done. Oh, hang on, that's directing credits. Writing. She has done Nothing else that I've seen. No, sorry, I have the Roundup in my DVD collection. That is a very good movie. That's about the roundup of Jewish children in Paris. It's extremely well produced, lovely period film. I'm assuming this is some sort of police show, Hotel de Police. So they got a French writer. I'm guessing she must have had, because it does feel like it was written by someone who had a strong interest in the history. But I dare say that there's no other people credited for rewriting. But I can tell there are other people's fingerprints on it here and there, I think. But in terms of the cast, just talking about some others, I love Armand Asante.
He was excellent.
Yeah, he's brilliant in anything, really. And many people will know him from Young Sherlock Holmes. Or
he was in the Judge Dredd with Sylvester Stallone. He was the villain in that.
Now, this is funny because I thought this was a shot of him from 1492, but it's actually
it's a little bit similar. Yeah, I didn't see the Odyssey.
It's a TV movie. It's not bad. Shot the same year.
Yeah,
quite enjoyable.
I remember as a child, though, I couldn't tell the difference between him and Moxima. I got them confused. I thought they were the same character when I was a kid.
Yeah, because he effectively plays Moxica, I think you pronounce it.
Moxica, yeah.
He effectively plays Moxica back home.
That's right.
Whereas Michael Wincott plays Moxica abroad.
That's right. Yeah.
They could almost be father and son, I suppose. Frank Langella is good in everything he's in.
Yeah, he's not in it a lot, but he's good in what he does.
No.
It's good to see is it Checky Caro, the French actor? He was good in this.
Yeah, he's not bad. I think he's the captain of one of the other ships. Am I right in thinking that?
Yes. Yep. He's the captain of one of the ships, and he gets very sick. But he was good in that.
He's basically playing the same character that Robert Davi plays in the other one. So I mean, as Robert Davi,
far more memorable. Sorry, Davey. He did that far better.
I really like Kevin Dunn as an actor, and again, he hasn't got a lot to do in this. Oh, don't want to have that trailer on. But I think what he did in this was decent. He managed to stand out.
Yeah. Another actor who was in this film, who sort of was a bit of a it guy that would pop up in movies in this time, was that fair-haired English actor who was also in Last of the Mohicans.
Oh, you're talking about, and I've met him. He lives down the road from me. You're talking about Stephen Waddington.
Yeah,
he plays one of the other crew members. He's a great actor, very underrated.
Yeah, he plays Columbus's brother.
That's right. Yeah, because I think wasn't him and Kevin Dunn, weren't they the two brothers?
Yes. Yeah. And Waddington's really good, and he was excellent in Last of the Mohicans. He's great, and Last of the Mohicans was a year before this film, so he was clearly the if you wanted a period film and an Englishman, you got Steve Waddington.
Yeah, I mean, he also popped up in Sleepy Hollow, Edward II. He's done a lot of stuff for the Royal Shakespeare Company. He's in the Kursk movie, which is a very good film. Very good. If you haven't seen it, bit heavy, but you know.
Seen it. Yeah, mate, but he's always plays a good Englishman, and he's always great in period films.
Yeah, no, I would agree.
So he was really good in it.
Look,
I have to say that when you compare what Sigourney Weaver did with Queen Isabella compared to what Rachel Ward did, ooh.
Oh mate, yeah, I'm not putting them in the same camp. I just enjoyed watching Rachel Ward doing her scenes because it was interesting to see, you know. And I watched Christopher Columbus after I watched 1492 again.
Oh, painful.
And I've seen 1492 about 7 times. I never even rented the Discovery. I watched it once, Odeon Leicester Square, saw it on the big screen. Oh my God, never watched it again. Didn't touch it on rental. This is the only time I've watched it since.
Of course. I mean, the fact you got through it twice is amazing. Isn't it interesting to see Arnold Vosloo, the Mummy?
Let me shout this guy out first.
He was good.
He's one of the assassins in Scarface. Many people may remember. He's the one
He's been in so many films.
He's going to blow up the car, and he ends up with his brains all over the windshield. Look at you now, you mother, and all that. And then, of course, he's in Breaking Bad and the various spin-off.
He's in Ace Ventura.
He is.
Yes, Satan.
Arnold Vosloo. It's funny, you see, I bumped into Stephen Waddington on the street. I bumped into Arnold Vosloo on the staircase of Foyles, London's biggest bookshop. He was coming down the stairs. I was going up the stairs, and I went, Arnold. And he went, yes. And I said, you're in the Scorpion King with my friend Sherry Howard. And he's like, yes. And we got chatting, and we ended up talking on the staircase.
Was he in the Scorpion King?
Yeah, he was. He played somebody in what, it was either the Scorpion King or Scorpion King 2 or something.
He was the Mummy. He plays the Mummy in The Mummy and The Mummy Returns.
Right, but doesn't he have a small part in Scorpion King as well?
Well, he might, but I never saw the Scorpion King.
Oh, I can't remember. Anyway, that was my segue into like talking to him like a normal person as opposed to a fan, I suppose. But we had a really good chat, and this is an interesting trailer for a movie he's in, playing an SS officer that I've never seen. I've normally seen all the World War II stuff. I wonder what. Oh, that's Condor's Nest. Yeah, seen the trailer for that. Let's move on. So I like Arnold as an actor. He does do his fair shares of B movies, but look, man, he's got to eat. He's got a certain look. He's not going to get cast in things like Succession and what have you. But he's a great actor. He's always good value. I like watching him.
He was good in this, and you can see how he would get to the Mummy,
absolutely.
So I think it was, but even like just take the relationship with Columbus in this film and his wife. They have a few scenes together. You get the idea that they love each other, but there's tension. You know that he wants to go and explore. She would rather her husband be home. There's love, but there's tension at the same time. And they only have a few scenes together, but just those few scenes are more memorable than all the boob kneading in
the boob kneading. Yeah,
need is in kneading dough, not kneading. I need this. It was just so differently handled. And it's so funny that the Solkinds, they must. I mean, just imagine being a Solkind and then sneaking into the theater to go see what Ridley Scott did, and then just sitting there and going, Oh no, this film is beautiful. This film is amazing. And this is the guy that we could have had.
They must have done that, right?
They must have.
They must have snuck in and watched it.
Well, look, I think they knew that Ridley Scott was a good director because they wanted him first and he's pissed off. And they sued him for almost the budget of the film. And they tried to legally have him barred from working on another Christopher Columbus movie. That didn't work.
No,
but
clearly
they tried, and I think they knew that because Ridley Scott's an artist, and
this is the actress, right, that played Departure's love interest. She's older now, obviously, than she was when she did the movie. Angela Molina. Is she any relation to Alfred Molina?
I would have thought it's a pretty common name.
Yeah, maybe. No, maybe not. By the way, you've got a bit of crackling on your mic, mate. I meant to mention that earlier.
How bad is it?
Olivia Molina, Antonia Molina, relatives. No. Lots of Molina relatives, but not the Molina that we were. Look, it's just like
I've got a terrible my sound in my computer's.
Do you need your headphones on?
They are on.
No, I said, do you need them on? I don't know.
Let's give it a try.
Hang on. Talk now. Now I can't hear you. You better reconnect it because I can't hear you now. Okay, no worries. It's not terrible, mate. It's just there's a little bit of a occasionally, but don't tell me I've lost your audio altogether now, have I? Oh, shit, mate. Now I've lost your audio altogether. You might have to log out and log back in again. Because we had that happen last time. Do you remember? So let me take you out the room for a sec. I'm just going to get you to relog in. And we'll see if we can get Matt's audio back on. Just going to take us back to the main cast here. Okay, let me bring him back in. We'll see if we fixed it. Have I got sound? Oh, I got you. Yep. Oh, and I don't know if the crackle's still there, but it wasn't all the time, by the way. It's just a little bit here and there. Okay, yeah. So sticking with cast, a couple of other people that are worth mentioning. Now, Fernando Rey, some people won't know who that is, but this is the guy who played the bad guy in the French Connection films.
Oh, yeah.
So this is the guy that Gene Hackman was trying to arrest, and he's in both movies. Sadly died in 1994. He's a massive Spanish movie icon. So actually, the casting director knew what they were doing, because they thought, well, look, let's bag some really good Spanish actors that are big hits in Spain. And they got a big Spanish actress to play Depardieu's wife. There wasn't a big Spanish male actor at that time that was going to translate across all nations. Of course, now you'd cast Javier Bardem, wouldn't you, as Columbus?
Of course.
So, but you didn't have in the late 80s going into the 90s, which is when they would have been looking. I can't think of a Spanish actor that had that kind of cash ticket credibility that would have sold tickets. Depardieu was kind of the compromise. He was a European foreign actor. He probably had a lot of mates in Spain. He's probably done some Spanish films. So he was.
But remember, Columbus himself wasn't Spanish. He was Italian.
I thought he was half Portuguese, half Italian, or did I get that wrong?
Maybe, but I believe they kept referring to him as a foreigner in the movie. They were like, this foreigner. I'm pretty sure that the Italians.
Sorry, you're right. He was an Italian explorer from the Republic of Genoa. You see, my opinion's been corrupted by these terrible movies. From
Genoa. Yeah, he was Italian. So a Frenchman playing an Italian who we think is Spanish. Yeah.
I'll tell you another thing neither of the films covered, which would have been interesting. And I mean, there's definitely room for a mini-series here. And I think a great mini-series would be to tell it from both sides and do one episode each. Start off with, how people love doing timelines and flashbacks now. Yeah. So do the first episode, it's the natives for like 50 minutes. And suddenly Columbus's ship is spotted on the horizon. End of episode 1. Go to episode 2. Start with that. Flashback 6 months earlier or whenever.
Yep.
Let's see the preparations of the vessel and the ship arriving. That's the end of
and episode 2. You get the mirror. You get the mirror of them coming out.
And seeing the natives on the shore. That's the end of the second episode. Then you go into the third episode, and it's half and half. Like, half is told native perspective, half is told from and that could just go on, and you could do an episode about the people waiting at home. I mean, anyway,
that'd be the way to do it.
That'd be the way to do it. Vignette. So he married Portuguese noblewoman Filipa Moniz Pestorello, presumably Spanish, who bore him a son, Diego, which is now that lady and that son features in both movies, and was based in Lisbon for several years. He later took on a Castilian mistress, Beatriz Enrique de Arana, who also bore him a son, Ferdinand. Don't remember that.
No, I think they left that out.
Don't remember that in either film. I mean, to be fair, it's not a key element to the story for Ridley's script. It definitely wasn't going to appear in the Silkines one, but if you did a mini-series, you definitely would have to get into that.
What I think from memory, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Silkines problem is that because it was the 500th anniversary, and they obviously wanted to, hit it. Is they absolutely tried to portray Columbus as this noble hero. Yeah. Noble hero. Oh, very good. Very good. He was, even from the very beginning, he was sort of like this handsome, swashbuckling kind of great leader with a vision, whereas Depardieu's Columbus is this eccentric, almost annoying, passionate, funny-looking guy that just so wants to do this thing. It's just... And shows that he's ultimately a very flawed character that did the wrong, who destroyed paradise.
Yeah.
I think neither is historically accurate, but the Soul Kinds is much more offensive because it really does try to say Columbus was a great guy. Whereas at least Ridley Scott goes, what Columbus did was not very good at all to the natives and did destroy paradise.
I would agree with you 100%. It's interesting that you brought that up because you reminded me of something that the Critical Drinker said. He did a review of Netflix's Cleopatra, and that's a whole other can of worms we could get into. But the 4-part documentary that has been slated by absolutely everybody, not least of all the Egyptians, and has
the lowest rated television on Rotten Tomatoes
ever. Yeah, that's right. But one of the things he said when he was talking about it was, if you're making a show now, you wouldn't do what Hollywood did back in the 50s, which is cast John Wayne as Genghis Khan in a Genghis Khan movie or miniseries. But it's like these guys in the era that they were in, which is, the 90s. So people were starting, this is the era that like Braveheart was being made. People were trying to do proper historical research and they were trying to get the look right, even if you were still Hollywoodizing shit. But you weren't. This is the era of Dances with Wolves. This is not the era of Cowboys good, Indians bad, right?
That's right. It wasn't. And clearly 1492 is attempting to do something.
1492 is like a Dances with Wolves kind of movie.
Yeah.
About a different topic, but it's in that veneer, it's in that genre. It's definitely in the same ballpark.
It's
this
in
is
the last
the John Wayne. The 1490. The other one is in the John Wayne Genghis Khan bar.
Absolutely, it is. That's why it feels like it's from the 60s or the 70s. Yeah. I mean, this is the era of Dances with Wolves, Last of the Mohicans, 1492, and Braveheart. Probably a bit more Hollywood than that, or Rob Roy. These are movies where they're trying to be historically accurate, and they're trying to get rid of the Hollywood veneer and go, here's reality, here's gritty, here's grey characters on both sides, and strip down that black hat, white hat sort of bullshit. But this Christopher Columbus film is so firmly rooted in the Soul Kinds version is so rooted in such an old world. That's why when you watch it, you're going, is this a 90s film? This doesn't feel like it.
Oh my God, I just realized something else about this movie because how much we both love the cinematography.
Yeah.
Well, the cinematographer is the father.
Adrian Biddle.
It's the father of the cinematographer I work with occasionally, Alfie Biddle, Adrian Biddle, who shot Aliens.
Yeah, Aliens. Yeah.
And
he's Adrian Biddle did The Mummy, I think, as well. The film.
He did Thelma and Louise. He did various.
He's fantastic.
He's a fantastic cinematographer. For those people who don't know the story, how Adrian Biddle came to do Aliens was the other cinematographer was fired one day into filming, I think, or either one day in or just before the production started.
I think it was about a week in. They got rid of that guy. He'd been fired. I recently found out that same cinematographer got fired off another film.
I think he got fired because he was drinking, or Anyway, him and Cameron, for whatever reason, it was all kicking off, and Biddle was basically asked at a moment's notice, "Do you want to come in and see this film and do this film, shoot this movie?" And he'd never done the DOP role. He'd done first assistant, camera and all the rest of it.
Well, didn't Biddle had done some second
unit
photography second unit on the original Alien, though, didn't he?
You're ahead of me on that. That I don't know. Let's have a quick look.
I feel like he had, or he had done second unit on
maybe he
Blade Runner or something.
I think it might have been his work in the camera department. You're right. He was a camera focus main unit on Alien.
Yeah, he had some connection to the first Alien,
and he was known to Ridley Scott already, and he had also done focus on The Duelist, which is also Ridley Scott.
Right. So he knew he could bring something because he'd been with Ridley. He probably could bring a bit. That's probably what he brought to Aliens.
That's interesting as well that Biddle was also I did not know this, that he was an assistant camera on Her Majesty's Secret Service and You Only Live Twice.
Wow.
I would have hit Alfie with a whole load of Bond questions if I'd known that when we were traveling down to France together. But we were in the car and everybody else on the unit knew what his dad had done. But me and him hadn't had that, like, let's bond about our dad's moment. And I was talking about how much I missed my dad. And he was saying, oh, my father died young as well, which sadly Adrian Biddle did of a heart attack, 53, I believe it was. And
Yep.
and I said to him, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. What did your dad do? And he's like, oh, he was like me. He was a DOP. I wanted to become a DOP because of my dad. And I was thinking, oh, have I seen anything he would have shot? Yeah, he did a few. He did a few big films. And I was like, sort of sitting there going, okay, yeah, cool, playing it very cool. Like, what? Yeah, anything I would have seen? Yeah, he did Aliens, Thelma and Louise, and he sort of like rolled off. I thought, boy, did I feel a tit. Okay, yeah. So a few big movies that I would have seen then. As Jim D said, V for Vendetta, and Alfie's a really good lad as well. He's a very good photographer. He's got a little two-man team with his main sort of camera guy and focus puller, whose name escapes me. He's also a lovely guy. They're a great little unit. You can hire them out, well, for anything, independent, big films, whatever. I highly recommend him. Lovely person on set, great temperament as well, which is very, very important. So now we know why it looks so great.
But it's kind of sad that the two people that I think get 10 out of 10 for this film, Adrian Biddle and Vangelis. Unfortunately, neither of them are with us anymore. But man, Vangelis' score is just out of this. It is in another stratosphere with movie. It is just one of the best scores. And tell us about how popular it was in 1992.
It was very popular. It was in the charts as a single.
Yeah.
And it was actually number one, if I remember rightly, in the UK. Now, I've got the CD, as I said. Here we go, main article, the album. So the main theme was called Conquest of Paradise. It's a big, long track. It's like and it's a long track for a reason, because it's supposed to represent the long journey across the ocean to get to the new world. As it were. Jim is saying his Alexander scores very good. We do need to do it.
I love the Alexander score.
We need to do an Alexander. Actually, do you know what? An Alexander and an episode. We should do two films like this. An Alexander and Kingdom of Heaven would be a good pairing.
Yes. I love both those films
because they were both weak when they came out, and they were both miles better because of their director's cuts, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
But that's
absolutely
that's a whole other story.
Vangelis' music for Alexander, I listened to that, Blade Runner, and 1492 constantly. 20 years, and I still listen to 30 years. I still listen to them over and over and over. And unfortunately, they've never released a full score of the of Alexander with all of the tracks, because there's so much good music missing. And watching 1492 again, I was going, this music's not on the CD. This music's not on the CD.
Yeah,
there's so much good music. It's not on the soundtrack album. It's so frustrating because it's so good.
Yeah.
If you are a film school student and you love movie soundtracks, you love cinematography, you must watch 1492 for those two reasons alone. You must see this film. It is so well shot, and the music is so bloody good. Talk about music, images, and sound meeting in the perfect marriage. 1492 is a classic example.
I want to talk about the sound design in a sec, but just to continue with the music thread, the single reached number one according to Wikipedia in Germany, the Netherlands, Switzerland, Germany official charts, etc. Number two in a couple of other countries, Belgium and so on. Now it says it reached the chart position was 60 according to Wikipedia. Now I'm going to tell you that that's wrong, and I know why that's wrong, because It was the only film soundtrack that I can remember, instrumental film soundtrack, that appeared on Top of the Pops. And Top of the Pops, when they did their countdown, it was always the top 20, maybe 30. It definitely didn't go above 30. I think it was the top 20 countdown. And Conquest of Paradise was definitely in that top 20 at one stage. It was not at 60. So peak position of charts, that's incorrect. It definitely did get in the top 20. Certainly on Top of the Pops, it was there for maybe 1 week. I can't remember. But going back to the credits, I'm curious to see, so for me, production design on the film, 10 out of 10 as well.
Stunning.
Norris Spencer, also sadly deceased, 62. Now, he did a few of my favorites. He did Black Rain. That's a film I like. Yep. He did Thelma and Louise. So clearly this is another Ridley Scott.
Yeah. And also Spy Game was directed by Ridley Scott's brother.
That's right.
It almost looks like Norris was the production designer until he died, and Arthur Max kind of took over for Ridley Scott's production design. I
think Arthur Max did some of the stuff on Band of Brothers. That name rings a bell.
Arthur Max was production designer on Gladiator, and I think that was one of his first collaborations with Ridley. So that's probably when the baton got handed from Norris to Arthur. But yeah, the production design in 1492 is beyond stunning.
Is there a sound designer on this who's like a single sort of
probably
sound
not.
Editor Peter Best? And there's more than one.
Oh, Peter Best has done a lot. I think one of the things that's so amazing about 1492 is how it marries image, sound, music together in such stunning images. Like the images that it puts on screen, they burn into your brain. Like you watch 1492, you can walk away and maybe you don't remember all the plot, but you also but you can remember the images. They burn into your mind.
One of the images that stuck with me, even with the brain damage I got in the early 2000s, which wiped out a whole load of shit for me, but there was one of the images that stayed in my head, and I was waiting for it to come up when I rewatched the movie. There's that whole battle sequence where there's one guy who's kind of like crossing a river, and he sort of gets stuck. He gets shot in like his eye, and it all goes into slow motion. It's very Ridley Scott battle-esque, and if that's a term, and that's all done with that kind of moody drum beat music that builds up to that battle. And I think it's when they're basically going after Moxica and his rebels, isn't it?
It is.
And it's a really good scene. Another thing in the film that always stayed with me.
It's art, man. It's just art.
Probably even stronger than that image. The one thing I always remembered, and I thought, God, it was such a good shot because it said so much, was when they come back to the island, having left 30 or 50 men behind. They go to the fort. They don't hear anyone. They arrive at the burnt out fort. There's a load of skulls, and there's one skull that matches the face of that deformed guy with the funny lip. And he holds it up, and you know it's that guy, and you know he's been killed. And he was like a harmless, sort of lovable bloke. And you're
like
thinking,
an innocent.
Lovely, and who would kill him? You know, something's gone very, very wrong here.
Yes.
And I like the fact you never find out exactly what happened. I liked that.
Yeah. That was the image of me as a 13-year-old when I watched this film, when he holds that head up and you know it's that guy because of the hair lip deformity, and you see that dead head. That was the thing that freaked me out, and it never left me for all the years. It never left me, and that's what I think Ridley's so good at, is putting images with the music, with the sound, into unforgettable images that burn into your brain. I think 1492 is one of the films in a time period in Hollywood's history where it sort of falls into I'd put it in a group of movies: The Mission,
The Mission,
Dances with Wolves, Last of the Mohicans, 1492, where they and maybe even Black Robe, where they sort of went, you know what, we're not going to do the John Wayne thing. We're going to look at these worlds through muddy, dark lenses, and we're going to look at the horror and the violence, and they're going to show it. And for the first time, as we audiences saw that violence and those violent worlds, and yeah. And interestingly, all those films, except for Black Rover, I haven't seen that in a long time. The music of all those 4 films, The Mission, 1492, Dancing with the Wolves, and Last of the Mohicans, the music is iconic.
I've got all 4 of those soundtracks. Ennio Morricone did The Mission. John Barry did Dances with Wolves.
Yep.
The Last of the Mohicans guy was Michael Mann's regular guy, wasn't it?
Well, it was actually 2 composers, Randy Edelman and Trevor Jones.
Trevor Jones, that's right. I think Trevor Jones did the main theme.
He did the main theme, yeah.
Yeah.
Randy did sort of more fill-in sort of music, less orchestral.
Jim's mentioned another film. I wouldn't quite put that in that category, Jim. But
I never saw Emerald Forest. That's a John Boorman film, isn't it?
The Emerald Forest is an odd one. It does strive for authenticity in certain bits, and then it spoils it by having this native guy go into an American city with his thong on and climb up the side of a skyscraper towards the end, which kind of killed the film for me. But there is a lot about the Emerald Forest that I did like, that I thought was really interesting. And it's basically a very early movie about the destruction of the Amazon forest, the destruction of the tribes, and the destruction of their way of life. And it's about a reporter going to find his long lost son, who is now gone native and is sort of disappeared and is living with those tribes people. I saw it at the cinema. In fact, I saw it twice because I went with 2 different friends who wanted to see it. Visually, it's a spectacular film. I don't think overall the film quite holds up. It's good. Again, it's good, but it's not great for me. That might be an.
I never saw it, but I always had a beautiful front cover in the video store, the Emerald Forest. I always remember being intrigued by the cover, but I never watched it.
Well, weren't the
90s? The 90s were such an amazing time for movies. It was. Geez, there were some good, amazing films.
You had a lot of authentic films in the 90s, and you had a lot of big-browed, sort of brash, good films in the 80s. Like your Red Heats, your Die Hards, and Extreme Prejudice, and the 80s was definitely the era of the blockbuster and the big names and the big action films, and Walter Hill, and then in the 90s there was still your Jerry Bruckheimer stuff. So you still had your Con Airs and your
The Rock,
the one set in the prison. I was going to say, I couldn't remember the name.
You had John Woo action coming in, and all
you
that
did, but then that was also tempered with some historic, what I don't want to say accurate, but historical realism as opposed to historical Hollywood.
Yes. And I think that's probably a good way to look at 1492. It's historical realism, perhaps not historical accuracy, but I think it's got enough accuracy in it to make it worthy enough to watch. To maybe get interested in the Columbus story. There's enough that it gets right. But my God, it's such a gorgeous film. And now I'm even more annoyed it's not in my collection, because it's such a hard movie to get hold of.
I'm actually thinking now I know Biddle did the photography on it. Now I want to have it. I've got the DVD of it. I have the DVD, but I don't have the Blu-ray.
But the problem is the Blu-ray. I've because I watched the Blu-ray copy. But the problem is that it's not an excellent transfer, and it's never been done. It's never been transferred properly. All the reviews on like Blu-ray.com, they always give it this very middle of the road rating as far as the grade, which is why hasn't 1492 been given the 4K rescan treatment the way that Ridley has done these other films? Because it's so worthy of if any format of any of his films. This is the one you want to see in 4K because it's such a beautiful movie. It would look stunning if they polished it up. Why haven't they done it? digitally restore 1492.
And all 5 of our viewers get out there and do that right now. And we'll
That's right.
We'll see if we can make a difference.
Let's see if we can get it trending, because it's a bloody good movie.
There's a few different. I mean, it ranges in price from £23 region B. I think that's me. To you know.
Oh, it gets very expensive. It's up to like $80 in some places.
This is quite a nice one. This silver cover, I quite like that one.
It's Spanish or something, that one, or French.
Yeah, but I wonder if does it have an English language option? You would have thought so.
Yeah, it does. They all come with the English language option because that was its original language.
They're all from the same transfer, all of these versions?
They're all from the same transfer, unfortunately.
Right. That's a shame. I mean, I guess my final question to you, though, Matt, is when are you getting your Christopher Columbus the Discovery Blu-ray?
If I ever got one, I would film myself snapping it. Because it doesn't. It's one of those films that should be forgotten. It should be relegated to the bowels of history and of cinema history. Do not watch this film, and I think that's what makes this such an interesting retrospective comparison review. Because here is one film I completely hated and would never recommend on my worst. No, I would recommend it on my worst enemy. That's how bad it is. But compared to 1492, which I would highly recommend that everyone go see it now. It's so bloody good. It's such a beautiful work of art. I now regard it even higher than I did before. They're so polarized, yet they are the same subject matter made in the same era with the same budget.
Well, good news, Matt. Your Christmas present's on its way because Christopher Columbus.
Oh my God!
It is available on Blu-ray.
Someone actually put it out.
They did. It's not an English one. I think it's is it a Der Entdecker? Is that?
Hey, I got an idea. Just excuse me while I quickly retire to my library. I'll be right back.
Okay, yeah, cool. Well, amazingly, they have put for the other Christopher Columbus, not the one we're recommending you don't watch. They've put that out there. What have you gone and picked up from your shelf, Matthew?
So this is another idea for a retro review that obviously we're doing. You know, if we've got our Alexander and our
Kingdom of Heaven
comparison review. Here's might be an interesting one because these two movies came out around the same time as Christopher Columbus, and both again with a similar subject matter. Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves with Kevin Costner, and Robin Hood with Patrick Bergin.
And that's funny because I've got friends in both of those movies. Danny Webb is in the Patrick Bergin, which is the very kind of sedate, gritty, grim, grey-looking one.
Yes.
Where there's no leaves on the trees at all because they shot it in winter to save money. And then, of course, you've got the big budget Kevin Costner one, which my late friend Alan Tompkins built the set for. Wow. In fact, I have a picture of him standing in front of it, I think, right here. Here we go. It was on the cover of his, you can tell somebody who's led an amazing life in the film industry when you go to their sadly their funeral and they
did he build that in a castle set, did he?
He did, and that's all on the back lot at Pinewood.
It's I love Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. I think it's such a good film.
I mean, Alan, they did this whole thing as like a production schedule booklet for the the speakers, and this was the live celebration where I found out sort of on the day I was the main speaker, which was this is a great photo of look at that of the set of Cleopatra.
Oh, wow.
On the back lot of Pinewood at the time, the biggest set ever built for a movie ever. Wow. And then that set was taken down and had to be rebuilt in Rome because filming got so delayed. I'm a big fan, Jim, of Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves as well. Saw it at the cinema opening night in London. And that was when all the film critics that came to the critics' premiere review of it were told by the filmmakers, please don't spoil the surprise ending that Sean Connery, who of course has played Robin Hood before, is doing a cameo at the end of the movie as a favor to Kevin Costner, who they were in The Untouchables together.
Of course, yeah.
And that's why he did it, and he popped up and just did it for a day.
Oh, and $1 million.
Well, did he get paid $1 million? I don't know.
Yeah, he got paid $1 million. He got paid $1 million, and it was a big controversy at the time because he got paid $1 million and turned up for 1 minute.
Well, I mean, he's probably there for the day. Yeah.
Look, but the film made
it's
much
worth
money. It's worth it. The film made so much money, and yes, I totally agree with our friend Jim D. I love Prince of Thieves. Absolute crowd pleaser. I will defend that movie to my dying day.
Oh, it's a modern Hollywood take of a classic tale, and that's absolutely fine. And it's not pretending it's anything different.
That's right. And it has got one of the best movie scores ever written by Michael Kamen. The theme of Robin Hood. It is. Every time I listen to it, I get excited about being. I get excited about being a filmmaker and watching films. So good. That's the one.
I can hum it badly. It is good.
It is in my top 10 soundtracks of all time. Is Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, and I would put 1492 up there as well. It's so funny when I was I play 1492 so often. My wife Nadia, I was watching the movie in my office, and she was like, and she was going, "What movie are you watching?" And I said, "I'm watching 1492." And she goes, "Oh, that's that music, 1492." And I'm like, "Yeah, what did you think that 1492 was from?" It was that film. And she's like, and the thing is, she was humming the music. She knows that music, but never saw the film. But the music, it's in her brain because she hears it so much. And that's just how wonderful and iconic that music is. Have I said the music for 1492 is good?
You have, mate, a few times. Well, we've been going for over 2 hours now. I think we should, much as me and Matt just love talking this stuff, we could do this all day. And I think people that watch it can tell. By the way, we had a lot of really nice feedback from the show we did the other week, which is why I think you and I should try and do this every week. Maybe not when I'm doing the show in a few weeks. I might have to miss that one, but
no, that's fair enough.
But if you're free next Tuesday, Jim is saying once or twice a week. Well, we'll let's try for once a week first, Jim.
Try for once. Twice a week we might be a bit busy with our schedules, but with our movies and theatre schedules. But I like the contrast and comparison of two different movies. It gives us more to talk about.
Yeah, that's a pretty good. If we can pick two films in a similar vein that came out, around the same era, they don't have to be exactly the same. Or we could do original and remake. That would work. That's right. Well.
But always compare two. And there are lots of movies that that either came out around the same time or have similar topics or were done in a completely different way or share similar themes. And we've got Robin Hood films, we've got Alexander and Kingdom of Heaven with director cuts. We'll talk about the director cuts.
I mean, we'll decide what we're going to do next week. We'll get the Gary app 9000. Or actually, I think, did you do the poster for this one? I think you did the poster.
Yeah, I can do them.
Yeah, easy. Wicked. Well, I'll tell you what, you can get the posters for those two episodes created now anyway. And we'll decide when we're going to do. Jim has pointed out Alien 3. I think what would be good on that one would be to do Alien 3 and Alien 4 together.
Yes, because I love one and hate the other.
I'm with you on that, but there are some things in Alien 4 that I really liked, and I just wish that bit was in a different movie. That bit was in a different movie. It was quite cool having an alien underwater. I quite like that. There was some stuff in it that was good, and there was some stuff in it that was just unfortunately far outweighed the good. Terrible man in a monster suit, and it just killed it. The less of the alien you see, the better an alien movie.
Absolutely, which is why I think Alien 3 is perfectly beautiful, wonderful, and a David Fincher film as well. And he's got his fingerprints all over it. So let's talk Alien 3 one day and compare it with Alien 4, because they are the black sheep of the Alien franchise.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got lots to say about both of them.
Yeah, Jim doesn't hate it, but it's very uneven. I'd go incredibly uneven. It would be my take on that. But
yeah, and until recently, it was the only Alien film I'd seen in the cinema. I'd never seen any of the Alien films in the theater except Resurrection. But of course, I fixed that last month, and I went and saw 1 and 2 back to back at the theater.
Oh, mate, that's interesting that you did that, because they do that fairly regularly, and I probably would have checked to see if that was on in London at the time of your visit this year. And they normally show Alien original cut with Alien director's cut, but I did go to one double screening where it was Alien extended cut, where you saw Dallas.
Yeah, that's one I saw.
It
was both director cuts.
Right, yeah, cool. And because the Alien director cut doesn't get shown very often. The Aliens extended cut with the sentry guns and all that gets shown quite a bit.
Well, I think the director's cut is now the definitive Aliens film. I think the original has very much been left behind.
I like the director's cut of Aliens better, for sure, 100%, because I love all the stuff with the sentry gun. I like seeing the colony with people in it beforehand.
Absolutely.
It makes the mystery bigger later. I'm not sure I prefer the Alien director's cut. I don't know that we need to see Dallas all cocooned up on the wall, and I think that kind of spoilt some of the stuff that came in Aliens later, because then we just had no idea what we were going to see. So maybe I prefer the original cut of Alien, perhaps. But I've only seen. Yeah, it is. That's a harder. Aliens is easy to call. That's a harder one to.
Yeah.
To call.
But to be fair, the changes are small. They're not big, overarching changes. They're just bit pieces here.
So Matt, what you got going on? What's happening with you? Anything you want to plug and promote before we wrap up? Thanks to the 5 people watching. Thanks to people in the chat. Like, subscribe, all that stuff, guys.
Thank you, guys.
Pop in and spend your time with us. We appreciate it.
Hope we've entertained you with our opinions.
Oh, absolutely.
Look, I got a new film that's coming out later this year called The Costs. There are some reviews of it. Unfortunately, the trailer is not released yet, which really sucks. But that's coming out later this year, probably in Q3 sometime. It's got US and UK distribution. I'm working on getting Australian distribution at the moment. But that's a revenge drama, and it's getting so far we've had about 5 official reviews, and it is every single one of them is excellent. I've never had a film reviewed so well. So no, it's exciting.
I can say that my fingerprints were on it every stage, because I was the first person to read the script, first person to see the cut.
That's right. You were one of the earliest. Hey, Lance, what do you think of this? People.
And I gave like little bits of feedback, and you made like little tweaks, and I was like, oh wow, actually you had some influence. This is wonderful. Felt very valued. Thank you very much.
There you go. That's what friends are for.
Well, no, it was good.
I'm sure one day I'll be repaying the favor.
If I ever make another film, we'll see. Hopefully, but
making a film is an act of sheer will. If you will it, it will happen. It won't be fun. It'll be pain, but you'll will it to happen. Yeah.
Well, I can tell you that making a low-budget play for no money is also an act of sheer will. And myself and my cast, Dickon and the other outcasts, are certainly shearing it into force right now. Is that a phrase? It is now. Okay, so look, guys, thanks for tuning in to the Outcast Creative channel. We're sorry we weren't able to bring you the interview with DOP Nick McLean. We had a lot of technical issues. Did really try the DOP from the Goonies. We're going to see if we can still get him. We do have the first AD of Who Framed Roger Rabbit and all 3 Back to the Future movies, David McGiffert, among others. His career is a much longer list than that. I'm not going to list them all off. That's already scheduled for mid-June, I think June the 11th. And then, of course, I've got my weekly roundup tomorrow. I'll be talking about Succession, Waco, The Aftermath. I'll be talking about a couple of other films I've seen, BBC drama, the Steeltown Murders, which I watched all 4 episodes of last night. So I'll be getting into those, talking about those. I may or may not have one of my collabs to come on with me. I don't think it'll be Matt, because I don't want to drag Matt in 2 days in a row. He has other things to do in his mornings, and that also is a little bit earlier. But remains for me to say thanks very much to my Australian co-host, one of the Outcasts Australia, for being with me for this stream, for the people that have been watching, and we'll see you all again real soon.
See you next time for retrospective reviews.
Don't forget to tell the people that you care about that you love them.